What's up, guys? It's Matt. This week, I'm actually not going to give the talk. I'm going to let my friend Hunter Allison do it. Hunter is an intern for Summit, and he's awesome. You might have met him during the movie night that we did last Sunday. So anyways, I'm going to let him go ahead and take it over from here. All right?
Hey, Fusion. As Matt said, my name is Hunter, and I am interning with Sam Townsend this summer, hanging out with the Summit students. A few things you should know about me is that I'm a senior at Bethel University, and I love doing just about anything outside. This summer, during quarantine, I've been playing a lot of
disco. I also love hiking and biking, and sometimes even kayaking.
If I was given the opportunity to have any superpower, I would have to choose Doctor Strange's ability to make those glowing rings. If you're unfamiliar with them, basically Doctor Strange makes these glowing rings, and then he can teleport anywhere he wants. I just think it'd be so fun to have that ability because I could use it in my day-to-day. I could use it when I'm late for work. I could just be there instantly. Or if I'm hanging out with friends and we wanted to go somewhere fun or exciting, anywhere in the world we could be there. I think outside of day-to-day things, it would just be amazing to be anywhere you want at any time. When I think of that ability, I think of God's omnipresence. And that's what we'll be talking about this week on the attributes of God. First of all, what is omnipresence? Omnipresence can be explained by saying God does not have size or special dimensions, and is present at every point of space with his whole being. Yet God acts differently in different spaces. So that's kind of like the wordy definition. What exactly does that mean? Well, it means that God is everywhere all the time, and yet he is beyond our space and time. The Lord of space cannot be limited by space because he created it, and he existed before his creation. Our first example of this is the very first verse in the Bible, Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. If we go over to Psalm and we look at 139, 7 through 10, we see that God is with us wherever we go. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. This is a great example of how God is with us wherever we go.
He's with me on the chorus. Oh, did you guys see that? It's my first ace. He's with me on the hills. And he's with me when I'm out on the trail. And God's with me even in a thunderstorm. Woo!
There are a few important things that we should keep in mind when talking about omnipresence. There's this important distinction that God is not only present in every space, but he cannot be contained in any space. Solomon prays in 1 Kings 8:27, "But will God indeed dwell on the earth? The heavens, even the highest heaven, cannot contain you. How much less this temple I have built." Here we see that Solomon is praying, and we notice that not even the highest heaven can contain God. And that just shows how big he is. But the problem with me saying that just shows how big he is that we can't even begin to describe how big he is. By me using the word big, it's diminishing how big he actually is. So that's one of the difficult things about talking about omnipresence and how big God is. There's no way that we can actually talk about, in our language at least, like how great and how big God is. When talking about omnipresence, there's this question that always comes up in my head, and that is, if God is present everywhere, does that mean God is present in hell? And I think the reason why I get so confused by this notion is that essentially hell is eternal separation from God. So how does that mean that God is present there? And I've heard it one way that God can be present to punish, sustain, or bless. And in this situation of talking about hell, I think that maybe God being present to punish is actually his absence. But there's different interpretations. That's just the way that I tend to lean, is that the eternal pain and suffering is because that God is no longer, that option to be with God is no longer there, and God is actually absent from hell. The second point of when God is present is that he sustains. In Colossians 1:17 it says, "He is before all things, and in him all things hold together." And it paints this picture of God in his presence in everything that we do. He is what holds us together, because he is what created us, and he is what put it all together in the first place, and at each and every day he is sustaining us. In Hebrews it says that God is upholding the universe by his word of power. Another example of how God sustains us. The third point, what I think is most commonly talked about in God's presence, is that God is present to bless. David writes in Psalm 16:11 that, "In your presence there is fullness of joy. In your right hand are pleasures forevermore." And yeah, I think that when we talk about God's presence, I think there's a lot of focus on blessings, but I love the idea that of God sustaining. I so often will forget. I'm always focused on the good and the bad, but what about the in-between, the mundane, the normal trials of life? I find that when I take a second to slow down and realize that God is sustaining me, it makes me feel so much more joy in the moment. When things just feel mundane, like nothing's happening, I have to realize that that is a blessing, because God is keeping me out of harm's way, and he's with me no matter what. So as I was studying for this talk on omnipresence, I was scrolling through social media today, and our very own Trevor Lindbergh in Summit posted on his story this Facebook post by Laura Jean Truman, and I just thought it was such a perfect example of God's omnipresence. So she writes, "Sunday, exhausted by screens, discouraged by our wobbly faith, isolated from the ones we love, disheartened by oppression, overwhelmed by our tiredness and our anger, and even overwhelmed by our own selves, we come. Meet us here, like this, as we are. Make all things new. Amen." And I just loved this post because it's so relevant to the time we're in, and our uncertainty, and all of the struggles that we might be facing, where we don't know what's going to happen. And I love at the end, she says, "Meet us here as we are." And I think it's such a perfect image for omnipresence, and it's comforting to know that God is here, and he is with us. And in this time of uncertainty where we don't know what's going to happen, he's with us every step of the way. And I think that we can find comfort in that. I think that moving forward after this video, I want to challenge you to think about your day-to-day and your where you might feel alone, or where you feel maybe conflict or a storm, or any sort of thing that is hindering you from being your full self. I just challenge you to think of a time where maybe recently that happened, or maybe something that is causing nerves or anxiety that is coming up. And I encourage you to remember that with God's power of omnipresence, that he is with us and he is comforting us. Thanks for listening to me, and I look forward to seeing you around Calvary. See you later. Bye.